And now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for. Time to make your musical vocabulary explode. And we begin doing so by using the simplest possible progression, one made of just 2 chords. There are countless songs built on this kind of progression, and one artist in particular, Carlos Santana, has built an entire stellar career based on these very 2 chords. Can you guess? Yes, I'm sure you do. A minor 7 to D7. Perhaps if we have a little volume is better. So A minor 7 and D7. Now, please look at the table that you have tattooed on your buttock and notice one thing. There is just one dominant 7th chord. Yes, there's also just one minor 7 flat 5, but I want to focus on the dominant 7th now. If you were looking at the major chord, this could be the 1st or the 4th degree. If you were looking at the minor chord, this could be a 2nd, 3rd or a 6th degree. But if you're looking at the dominant 7 chord, that can only possibly be the 5th degree. That's why in an earlier lesson I said that the dominant 7s are the most important chords of them all. I said they are pivotal because our entire harmonic edifice pivots around them. So in the progression we're looking at now, the dominant chord is a D7, so that must be the 5th degree of a major scale. But which scale? Go back to the first fingering for a major scale I showed you and count with me again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I find my D here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ah! D7 is the 5th of G. Okay, so by looking at the D7 chord, we can say with certainty that we're in the key of G major. Now look at the other chord in the progression, which is A minor 7. And A is indeed the 2nd degree of the G major scale. Our magic table tells us that a 2nd degree has to be minor, and therefore further confirmation that we are indeed in G major. This is a 2 to 5 progression in the key of G major. 2 minor 7 chord built on the 2nd degree of the scale, and D7 dominant 7 chord built on the 5th degree of the scale. Before we start making music, let's make another example to make sure that we drive home this absolutely crucial concept. Let's take a similar progression, D minor 7 to G7. Okay, I'm playing a D minor 7 9, if you remember from our minor chords, to a G13, substitution for a G7. I could play easily, no worries with that, but I like this chord's better. Okay, so G7 is the dominant 7 chord, and G is the 5th degree of what scale? Let's go and look. A G here, I go back, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm in the key of C. Find the C here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, G. So we are in the key of C major. And of course, D, it is indeed the 2nd degree of a C major scale. So D minor 7 to G7 is a 2, 5 progression in the key of C major. Now back to our Santana 2 chords. We said that the progression A minor 7 to D7 belongs to the key of G major. Notice that we do not actually play the G major chords, we just play 2 and 5, and we call this a 2-5 progression. And having established that we're in the key of G major, what does that mean for our soloing possibilities? It means that over this particular progression you can play, at least in theory, all the scales built on all the chords that belong to the G major progression. But before you throw your hands up in desperation, let me tell you that you can, at least in theory, but you absolutely don't have to. In practice, for each key, you get endless, tasteful, melodic soloing possibilities using just two of these scales. And so now, slowly but surely, we start exploring these possibilities, beginning from the scale that you know best. And here, what would you play by default on a Santana vamp like this? Remember? That's Oye Como Va, and you would play an A pentatonic, isn't it? First of all, is this harmonically correct? Is this consistent with what we've been saying so far about harmonies and the scales and the chord progressions? Yes, broadly speaking, yes. The pentatonic scale that blues players use is essentially a minor scale. So if you look at our master table, the magic table, you see that A is the second degree in the key of G major, and the second degree is indeed minor. So playing an A minor scale on this particular progression is harmonically correct. I will show you later that this, however, is not your best choice. Enough theory for now. Let's make some music. I have prepared another backing track, which is number 5, going over the Santana progression we've been discussing with a jazzy groove. So we begin by learning how to use the pentatonic scale in a jazzy fashion. First of all, as we said many times already, do not play scales. Play melodies instead. You're greatly helped in this by playing fragments, that is just a few notes at a time, and by finding short phrases and repeating them with small variations. Also remember not to bend notes, because this is not part of the jazz vocabulary. Slur up to your target note instead. Thirdly, use chromaticisms. This means moving up or down by semitones. And on a scale, this would be a diatonic progression. You move by tones, and this would be a chromatic progression. You move up and down by semitones, and this is done a lot in jazz and adds to that jazzy sound that you want to achieve. As you experiment with your chromaticisms, remember to use the flatted fifth, which is used a lot in blues and can be used very effectively in a jazz context as well. We're in the key of A here, so you've got your A, minor third, fourth, flatted fifth, and fifth. Okay? Very bluesy, but as we will see, very jazzy as well. Now, please, before you go any further with this course, spend some time experimenting with your pentatonic. I've promised you several times that you could cover a lot of ground in jazz by simply using the scale that you use every day in your blues or rock playing. So here we go. You're just starting to see the expressive power of this beautiful scale in jazz, and I promise you that you will be astounded when we will use it on more complex chord progressions and jazz standards.